Well, just so you're prepared, when you get to be as old as I am, your memory will start to fail you. So just a heads up.
I think I am older than you.
I still have my collection of paperbacks still. They're in a box right now because I only moved a year ago, so I haven't had time to unpack yet, but they're here.
They need to breathe. Get them on a shelf.
I know. I clearly need to build up my self-esteem in order to reach that point, but...
Oh, it's gonna be a long afternoon.
Hashtag never gonna grow up.
There we go. I support that wholeheartedly. Nice.
See, I'm gonna go back to work tomorrow and I'm gonna tell him, I am not alone. I am not alone. Coming up, problem solving is hard, let's face it. And it can be even harder when you're trying to help others. Tips and insights on how to help when someone needs it the most. That's today, and it all starts right now. So we all have problems. Some of them are math problems, some of them are word problems, and if you're like me, you have that problem where you bring the car home with an empty gas tank and it turns out there's nobody else to fill it up but you. Still trying to figure out how to fix that one. But problem solving can be tough, as I indicated in the intro, but when it's done right, it can be a good experience for all involved. And our guest today brings a wealth of expertise and experience to that topic. And I can tell you that firsthand because she is front and center in my cheering section. We all need a cheering section. And Jill is an absolutely amazing person and a very cool person for always giving me encouragement. So Jill, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me, Brandon. It's nice to actually speak with you face to face. I know we're constantly typing back and forth, so this is really fun for me.
It is absolutely our pleasure to have you. So aside from being an insanely cool person, Jill by trade is also a personal trainer with a specialty in special populations, and that means the elderly, people that are post-rehab, or people that have developmental issues. Basically, she helps anybody who needs it. Aside from that, she also lives on 40 acres of woods, if you can believe that. And she makes life out there look as easy as 1-2 tree, but there's a lot of potential distractions. So, Jill, I won't steal your thunder, so why don't you give us a little bit of background? Tell us who you are and what you do and what you enjoy doing.
So, I actually co-own a personal training studio and business in Seattle. We focus on, like you said, special populations. That just sort of happened because of the niche of the neighborhood. As such, it became very evident that it was a needed area of practice up there. There's a lot of elderly folks. There were a lot of children with autism that needed some attention to and needed a place to be. So we have kind of skewed our expertise toward that, and it's been phenomenally rewarding, and I absolutely love it. Was that my intention from the beginning? Absolutely not. I graduated from the University of Washington a long time ago in sociology. I had a plan to go into social work. Due to a bunch of reasons, decided not to go that route. Attempted to go to law school, to go into family law. That did not pan out. And so my dad, who owned his own business, I've always sort of been interested in that. And I said, okay, it's time to start my own. And that's the route it took. And through a number of steps, ended up in Seattle, owning a studio, and here we are.
So if you work in Seattle, I have to ask the question, is the Starbucks per square mile as high as it's portrayed in the movies?
Absolutely it is. But you know what? I am a huge supporter of small business. So for those of you who are Starbucks fans, fantastic. You will not see me in a Starbucks. I will go to the small little stands all day long.
Nothing wrong with that. As you said, as soon as you said Seattle, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about the 11 seasons of Frasier that I watched and all the jokes they made.
I love that show.
Nice. I have a simpatico. Nah, and I was thinking about all the fun they poked at the number of coffee shops per square mile in the city. So I just had to ask if that was just something that they were doing for laughs, or if there is truth to that.
Oh no, there's absolute truth to that. I think some of those small coffee shops have kind of geared more towards breweries now, which is totally fine with me. But yes, there's truth to that.
And I will fully admit there was a bit of an ulterior motive to that, because as those of you who have watched this channel for a while will know, I am never far from a cup of coffee. This particular blend is Dunkin' Donuts Dunkin' Decaf, because we're doing this at 5:08 in the afternoon and I want to sleep tonight, but I drink coffee a lot, so there you go.
And I've always wondered, there must be a non-compete clause with Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts, because why don't we have Double D out here?
It's a good question. I'm sure they're coming that way, because you know the Dunkin' Donuts motto, right?
Enlighten me.
Do or do not, there is no try.
Goodbye, Brandon.
As people from coast to coast start groaning and say, "There he goes." For anybody that I work with that had to hear that joke the last time we had donuts in the office, that one's for you. Oh.
I envy your coworkers, I really do.
We are having way too much fun. And for anybody who's out there watching, we're going to have a good time today. So, I talked about Jill as being incredibly cool earlier, and she is. And if you couldn't tell, one reason why is she's fun to laugh with. I mean, who doesn't like to laugh? But more importantly, as some of you may know, this past spring, I took up running for the first time in more or less in 2 decades since I got out of college, and been steadily making improvements this year. But sitting in the front row of my cheering section, you will find Jill. Like, I post an update on Facebook or Instagram, and I get a thumbs up and some words of encouragement, and you don't think about it in these terms, but when you're trying to get kind of your PT on track, it helps to have someone to keep you accountable. And that's part of what Jill does. And it's absolutely awesome that you do that. And so on air, I want to say it. Thank you very much for all the support and encouragement this year as I've tried to graduate up from the 20-minute mile that I started with.
Yeah, well, Brandon, I'll tell you, it's been nothing short of just inspiring to get my little alerts and say that you tagged me in your stat updates. And I mean, that's just fun. How can you not get excited about people improving on their health and reaching their goals and feeling like they're making themselves stronger and better? That gets me going. So I appreciate you involving me in that and including me, because it fires me up. So thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And what Jill just described is a kind of an overview of what we wanted to get through today. So, as I described in the opening, problems are everywhere. I like to cite math problems and word problems because those were the bane of my middle school and high school existence, but there are other problems out there. And when someone comes to you for help, it can be a bit of a challenge to figure out how best to respond. And the example that I like to cite as at least what I think is a good example is a couple of years back, there came a day when a coworker came to my office and was in tears, unfortunately, because there was a problem, and they came to me for some comfort, some encouragement, and a place to get away from what was wrong. So we talked, and I said, stay here, get sanctuary for as long as you need it, and there's absolutely no problem. And not long after, another one of our coworkers actually came looking for them because they weren't at their desk, and they too knew what was going on. So we both offered what support and encouragement we could, and then I did what I could do to address the problem behind the scenes, and the problem was solved, and everything eventually got better. But it would have been very easy for me to simply say, nope, I don't want to be involved. I don't know anything. Well, we all know that I don't know anything. Anyone who's seen more than one episode of B Squared knows I know nothing between here and here. But it would have been very easy for me to say, for reasons of plausible deniability, I'm sticking my fingers in my ears and humming the theme from The Simpsons to disconnect from all this. I didn't do that. And it sounds silly, but the point to saying that is empathy plays an important role in helping others solve their problems. And in a way, I look at Jill having always offered me support and encouragement when I needed it. And believe me, there are days when I've been running and 5 miles might as well be 500 miles that, frankly, I say I want to be able to post that Excel spreadsheet at the end of the week with a good number so that Jill will say good things instead of saying, "You slacker." So, that's empathy. Calling me a slacker is empathy. Just trust me on this one, it works. So, but what do you think about all that? If you had or have an interest in social work, that implies a certain degree of empathy. And my understanding is that you have a rich background with exposure to some other fields. And as you said, it was the personal training industry, which is focused on helping others, that drew you to it. Mm-hmm. So talk to us about that a little bit.
So there's been a number of things that have really kind of spurred my interest into a service-centric profession. When I was 14, I was hospitalized for anorexia. And there was another young woman who was my age that was in the hospital with me and had been there a very long time and had not made any changes. When I was admitted, we became good friends, and I was almost her confidant. I became somebody she talked to every single day. And within the course of building our friendship, she was able to get better, and she was finally released. Not long after that, I received a letter from her family, and it was 3 pages of essentially telling me how much my listening and being there for her helped their daughter, and how much they appreciated, even though I was in a bad position myself, the fact that I was brought on the scene and became someone that understood and was there to listen and help, that their daughter was able then to get better and move on with her life, and the value that was in that. And even at 14 years old, that really hit something in me, that even though there was an element of suffering on my end, that somebody else then went on to succeed. And I ended up doing just fine myself, right? And recovered and all that. But that was really a pivot point for me in recognizing that being there for somebody in a time where they really need it can lead to great things. And so that's why after that, I ended up volunteering and working for the National Eating Disorders Association before they moved on to New York. But everything became focused on how do I help other folks. And in that practice, help myself grow and understand things as a person. And in all those areas, you meet people who walk different lives than you, or walk different paths than you, and believe different things than you. But all that helps expand your own sense of knowledge, right? And it sounds kind of cliche, but really it does make you a stronger, more empathetic person, and it makes you more valuable to society, I think, because you're not it. We need to be listening to one another. We really do.
We absolutely do. And as you say that, what comes to mind is, I'm going to misquote this no matter how carefully I try, but there's this an aphorism that holds that the deepest, nicest people that you'll meet are the ones that have the deepest scars, or something like that. And I've heard that many times over the years, and you hear variations of that all the time. I mean,
yes.
Anytime that you hear someone say, everybody should have to do time in the food service industry or the retail industry to imbue them with
or
some
the
degree.
Military, right.
Yes. And full disclosure to everyone watching, in college, I did the retail thing with Walmart and Radio Shack and Food Lion. I've worked with the military since I got out of college, and it really does give you a very unique perspective on some things. And probably the best.
I did food service and bartending. Yep.
So you get it. And that's the thing, so you're probably the type that when you go to a restaurant, if the food isn't just absolutely perfect, you don't turn Karen and you say, well, if it's not a huge deal, I'll just take it as is. But then again, maybe if you're allergic to chicken and it has chicken in it, you might say, yeah, maybe I should send this one back.
Right. Yeah, I'm actually one of those people that if it's not what I asked for, I'll still eat it. You know why? Because I can afford to eat out at a restaurant, and I should be happy about that. Unless, of course, right, like you mentioned, there's health issues and things that go along with that. But no, I am almost to a fault very sensitive to those who work in the food industry, because I know how excruciating people can be.
2 words: side work.
Yes.
The part of my time that I spent working at Ruckola Cafe, if anybody remembers that from decade upon decade ago, the part of the day that I dreaded was the rolling of the silverware. I'm like, haven't they invented
wasn't that horrible?
Yes, it was! I'm like, haven't they invented a coin-operated machine to do this yet?
So a girl that I bartended with, it was so funny, she loved rolling silverware because she thought it was cathartic. And I said, fine, here, do it, because I'd rather talk to people all day long. No thank you. Oh, just awful. What tedious work. I'm with you.
I had to force myself to do it.
Should I start my own counter, Brendan?
It wouldn't be the first time we had such a thing.
I'll write it on the wall.
It's funny you should say that, because one of the times that I was deployed, people realized that I was a punster early on, and on the whiteboard at the front of our office, they had 2 hand-drawn meters. One was puns in the mock overall, and one was puns that Brandon has made. And there was a day, I reported for duty at 7 a.m. There was a day that before we went to chow at 7:30, I had gone through all 5 of mine.
What?
Yeah. If I can.
Do you wake up? Do you wake up and start running these through your brain? Like, is that how you wake up in the morning? Do you just crack yourself up?
I'd like to deny that that's how it works, but what I always tell people is, in most people, they have a portion of their brain that they dedicate to thinking about adult problems, like, when they're going to get gas next, or what they need to get at the grocery store, or, how they're going to afford the next car insurance payment, which for some of us is insanely high. And yeah, that's a story for another day. But that portion of my brain instead dedicates to, what words can I have fun with today? So, yeah, no responsible adulting here. And for anyone,
all right, I'm gonna try and start thinking in that realm, because I do get the word of the day from my dictionary app. Sometimes I'm going, okay, that's I can fit that in. And other days I'm going, why? But I like the pun situation. I'm gonna try and focus on that.
For anyone that I work with, you heard it here first. I am not alone.
He's starting a movement.
I am. Hashtag bad influence.
Yep.
Oh boy. When my coworkers see this, I'm probably going to get pied in the face, and I deserve it for some of the horrible puns I've made over the years. So
I just hope they get it on film.
Oh yeah. Well, to put it in perspective, I used to work with a guy whose name was Moody. And whenever he was around, the mood seemed to shift. I felt very moody, and I had to turn on the mood lighting, and yeah, every time it got to a point where that was how I got my start. But you know what happens when a snowball starts rolling down a hill? That's kind of what happened.
Yeah.
And there were days, and to this day, it still happens. There are days when someone will say something, and I'll be distracted and, maybe thinking about what kind of pizza I'm getting ready to order, and I'll miss something, and I'll tune back into the conversation and go, what did I miss? And someone will go, whatever you're going to say, don't say it. And I'm like, what? It's like Lenny showing up at the disaster area formerly known as Ned Flanders' house in that one Simpsons episode. It's like, hey, I just got here. What's going on? So, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so that's what life is like with me. Yeah. Have sympathy for my coworkers, everybody.
They're lucky to have you. Everybody's got to have that bright light, Brandon.
I think the bright light in this case is the one they want to use to
tell your coworkers I said that.
I will. I think the bright light in this instance is the one they want to hold up and interrogate me under. It's like, why aren't you thinking about doing your job? Why are
Oh, there is that. Yeah.
Oh, but then I always tell them that there are exactly two things people keep me around for: bad jokes and door holding. And only one of those is profitable. Hodor. Oh, boy. I told you guys out there we were going to have fun today. Did I lie? I did not.
I love it.
Oh, man. So while you were describing that earlier, I don't know if you saw it, but I actually wrote something down. And on my notepad of forgetfulness, no one alone. And I say that because that's actually kind of been one of the themes of season 1 of B Squared, from the episode on the Great Resignation to the installment that we did with Danny Reardon to Gretchen Kittleberger's appearance. It's whatever you're going through out there, you are not alone. And my experience suggests that the biggest thing that can make a difference to someone, like you said, isn't even someone that has all the answers. I mean, that can be helpful, but the biggest thing that can impact someone is knowing that they're not alone. So I might say, I'm addicted to pizza, and that the Papa John's Corporation has benefited from that addiction very substantially over the years. But I'm comforted by the fact that Papa John's has such a large profit margin. That suggests that I'm not alone. So in that, I take comfort. So, I mean, that was an excellent point to make. And I don't think that's something we can emphasize enough. And I got to say, too, I'm going to go off on a tangent here for a minute, but one of the things that I like to feature on B Squared is boss stories of people who have overcome big challenges in their day. And one thing that I've always wanted to kind of talk a little bit about that we've never really had a good opportunity to is people who have overcome eating disorders. As I know quite a few people that have, but I've never been brave enough to ask what the experience was like and how they transformed from where they were to a position of success. Now, I dare say you overcame that challenge in a boss way and went from having an eating disorder to not having an eating disorder. So, I mean, what would you be willing to tell us about what that experience was and how you overcame it?
Well, I mean, that's probably content for a whole other show but I want to say I was fortunate, I guess, to kind of fall into those unhealthy patterns early enough in life where your brain is still developing, right? So once it got recognized, we were able to implement a plan of care, right, that helped to stall things before they got, it's much harder to treat when you're in that later stage of life. So I was lucky in the sense that I had a very caring support system that recognized ill behavior patterns and had the ability to seek out the resources. So, but again, I saw that there were other people in my same situation that didn't have that support system, which is why I then went on to volunteer and work for the National Eating Disorders Association to help other people who maybe didn't have that support system find places where they could get plans of care, counseling, that sort of thing. So it's very important to be able to help people find, again, the people that will listen, right? Because it can be a very, very, very lonely experience.
And that's one of the most important skills that you can have as a problem solver, the ability to listen.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because there was a quote that I read. So, from a commencement speech at San Francisco University High School, and maybe you've seen this on memes going around social media, but it says, opinion is really the lowest form of human knowledge. It requires no accountability, no understanding. The highest form of knowledge is empathy, for it requires us to suspend our egos and live in another's world. It requires profound purpose, larger than the self kind of understanding. Which, that, to me, that really sticks out, right? Because we currently live in a state of society where we are bombarded by everyone's opinion about everything, about every issue. And I don't think that that's necessary all the time. I think that it's vastly important to be an ear, and sometimes to sit back and go, okay, what are people screaming for, asking for, what do people need, and then try and be a catalyst for positive change, right? Like on my social media, I've had people say, well, you don't really seem authentic because you never comment on, political things or big issues. And, I have my stances on things, right? Which I talk to in my smaller circles, but I think it's nice to have spots in that larger realm of social media where you can go and not be bombarded by opinion, and just find some semblance of peace or fun, and just anything to kind of change that gear in your mind a little bit.
As much as I detest the phrase that I'm about to use, you really do need a safe space, a refuge to, like you said, find safe harbor. And I mean, people have twisted that phrase into something far beyond what it was meant to be, but what you just described is exactly what it was meant to be, which is a safe space from the hurricane of stuff. And I started to use another word beginning with S that had a T in it, but this is a family show, so but you know what I'm thinking.
Good reminder, Brandon. Thank you for that, because I don't want to let my vocabulary slip either.
Well, I try to stay away from any potentially controversial or explosive topics, like the question of what the best pizza topping is. I referenced this on LinkedIn the other day, and I was advocating for pepperoni, but someone else thought, no, it's better for sausage, and we got into it, and we were reminded that we were not being inclusive because we had neglected the bacon lovers. And I think, you know what? Bacon deserves due consideration as well. So, but
sure.
But and I told them that this week I will atone for my lack of inclusivity by ordering from Papa John's a half pepperoni, half sausage with thick crust, and a side of bacon cheese sticks. Everybody's happy.
There you go. Perfect.
And they said,
I would probably just watch that debate happen. I would get a pizza with all of it and just quietly pick off what I don't like, and then enjoy what I do.
Nothing wrong with that. That approach certainly provides some food for thought, that's for sure. It was either that or something including the phrase, you gave us a pizza your mind.
I don't know, to add another check mark, or is that like a half?
I'll take a full hit on that one because I deserve it.
Okay. Awesome.
For my lack of willpower, because that was an excuse just to get that out there. I admit it. I'm a bad man. No, but you're right, and it's interesting that you should say that, because speaking from the perspective of a communications professional, that's what I do for a living. It can be very difficult to kind of cut through the noise and get focus on important topics when the need arises. And it's because there is such a sandstorm of, I'm blanking on the right word to use here. I'm going to default to content. We'll say content.
Okay.
We'll say content. There is such a sandstorm, a glut, if you will, of other content to get through. And like it or not all of it is quality stuff.
Right. Right. Well, and we could debate what's quality versus, for one person might not be quality for another as well. Right. So, of course. Yeah. We're in a very interesting, fascinating time period for sure.
Yeah, we are. And the thing that I see, believe it or not, through all the happenings of these last few weeks, the thing that I've seen commented on most is not the substance or form of the events that have been happening. It's the fact that people are marveling, and not in a good way, that there seems to be no room for respectful discourse. In other words, people immediately take to their position and they barricade themselves against dissent. And so I know a good portion of my audience is from the sovereign citizen and First Amendment auditor watch community. That applies to the people that you expose as well. Because if you think about it, Jill, I don't know how much you know about SovCits and First Amendment frauditors, but a couple of episodes ago we did a panel on that, so worth looking into. But one of the most common traits of First Amendment auditors in particular is they push so hard for transparency for others, but scurry away from the light like roaches themselves. But they also harden themselves against any opinion that contradicts their beliefs. So in other words, these people they'll go into like a post office, say, with their camera phones up, recording, because it's their absolute First Amendment right to film unabridged in public. That includes minors, it includes people that ask them not to, and so on, and police too when they arrive. And upon being told that no, there are rules that preclude their ability to film in public, instead of saying, okay, there may be a societal rule against this, they double down and say, but my First Amendment rights. Now, if you watch the panels that we've done, the consensus seems to be that there's a profit motive there, and there is, but it takes a certain, what we describe as narcissism in order for someone to get to that point. And, so if you see the banner along the bottom of the screen, some friends of this channel share content like that of these people being exposed for the nuisances they are. Artie's Corporate Fiction, Keeping It Criminal, Kfar, my buddy Kfar, go and subscribe to his channel. He's been on this channel more times than I can count because he's been on here more than 3 times, and I can't count past 3, not without using my fingers. Go and subscribe to his channel. Go and subscribe to all of these great creators, and you will not regret it. But at any rate, as soon as we start talking about people insulating themselves from different beliefs than their own, that popped into my mind. So I had to share that. But I mean, where do you see that kind of thing in your experience? Because knowing what you do, I'm betting that you've run into a wall or two yourself.
Oh, 100%. And actually, in college, I was far more boisterous about my opinion and sharing what I believe and being loud about it. And I think as I've grown and matured, I definitely sit back now and I let other people talk. Okay. And especially with my job, it's not um, it's my job to offer guidance and advice on things, but I'm also kind of a counselor, right? People come in and they want to tell me about what their issues are and their pain, and then that inadvertently affects how their mood is and their how they're functioning in their family life, and it's all related. And so I've definitely taken a back seat to needing to shout my beliefs from the top of the roof, because taking in and listening to people and kind of really unpacking what they're saying is key to developing in my practice a plan of care, right? And into programming. It might seem silly that I'm designing a workout program based on their mood and their opinions on things, but that actually will dictate how their week is going to go, right? So I need to listen and take into account all these other things in order to effectively build something that they're going to use. And so there's everything is just all blended together, Brandon. It is. It's amazing.
It absolutely is. And what you just described is another one of those life skills that increasingly seems to be in short supply. Because what you were describing was the distinction between listening to reply and listening to understand. And what you just described is the half of it
Correct.
where you listen to understand. And I gotta say,
Yeah.
having that skill, I gotta give you mad props for that. That is very respectable, especially in 2022.
Well, I mean, but it's a practice skill, right? You have to kind of second guess yourself, not second guess. To check yourself too. And I do that a lot. When I'm typing with people, it's if I respond emotionally, I'll type it out, read it, go, we can do better, delete, come up with a more mature way of responding, and a more helpful way of responding. Because I think the knee jerk reaction to again respond to listen to reply is it's dangerous and it's not helpful. And most people again too, they what's the meme? There's something about or the saying when somebody comes to you with a problem, ask them, are they looking to receive advice, or do they just want an ear? Because that's an important distinction as well, right? Sometimes people don't want advice. They just need to vent. And that's a vastly important distinction.
It is. And I'll take that a step further. There are some situations that I've encountered over the course of my 37 years, yes, I'm old, that trying to offer advice has inadvertently made things worse. I mean, there's a distinction between good intentions and good outcome. So you are
Absolutely.
You are 1,000% right.
How many times are we able to dole out great advice, and then we're going, oh God, I can't even follow my own advice, So being aware of those discrepancies and those shortcomings is huge as well.
And that's why when someone asks me for advice, a lot of people will come to me with the question, what should I do? They want to know what I think they should do. And I say, I'm not terribly comfortable framing answers in that way. A better answer, at least I think, is if it were me, this is what I would do. And I'll walk through kind of what I think the right answer would be and why based on my background, with the caveat that what makes sense to me may not necessarily make sense to others. It's no different than I like to use, if you watch the product that I did on narrative paradigm theory more years ago than I want to admit that I've even aged, one of the points that was made was that everyone takes the actions that they take for what they consider good reasons. And the analogy was when you're watching an episode of The Price is Right and someone is getting ready to bid on an item, You're sitting there shouting bids at your TV. I don't know why we all do it, but I know that we all do it. And they may bid a completely different number. And you're like, it's like when you're watching a basketball game. Like, what the heck was that? How could someone make a call like that? You know, it's the same kind of thing.
Sure, you're armchair quarterback. Yep, absolutely.
So that was a long-winded and nerdy way for me to say your mileage may vary from what someone else is getting. So yeah, maybe next time I should just say that and not be long-winded.
I appreciate the analogy. I do.
Maybe I should have a geek pride flag to show on screen whenever I'm about to say something really nerdy. That way, you know, like that you have a headphone warning.
A little icon flasher.
Yeah. It's like a headphone warning when you're about to sound an air horn into the microphone. You know, you want people to know what's coming.
Right.
Same principle.
Yeah. There you go.
Full disclosure, I have never used an air horn either with or without a microphone. It's just one of those examples that you have, but you never think you're going to need. So there you go. Told you we were going to have too much fun today, and I'm totally here for it. So
I love it.
So in terms of problem solving, I think we've done a good job describing the distinction between listening to reply and listening to understand. But
sure.
One of the things I'm about to admit a failing of my own here, but one of the things that I struggle with is when someone brings me a problem, sometimes I'll think to myself, okay, here's how I'd handle this. And I'll get so caught up in the mechanics of dissecting the problem and answering the question, what would I do, that I forget to ask them for the rest of the story, the Paul Harvey move. And I think that's an important part of the process. I've heard some people say that they don't want to pry, they don't want to break people's privacy, but I mean, Jill, what's your experience been in those terms?
I think people are more apt to share than you might think, especially if they're coming to you for, an ear or any amount of advice. I think that the more you show interest into the different layers of whatever that problem might be, shows that you have a vested interest in understanding that problem at its root, right? And obviously making sure that they know that you understand any barriers that they want to have or any limits, that's fine. But in my experience, people are very, very almost excited to share kind of those deeper elements behind things. And that may come from the fact that maybe we don't ask each other enough questions about what's going on behind the scenes. My battery's running low. Hang on. So I think showing a vested interest in where certain issues are stemming from is hugely important. Does that answer your question?
It does, and that was a terrific answer. So I'm going to steal a term that you used earlier on, authenticity. And from what you just said, it sounds like authenticity plays a substantial role in self-problem solving, but also in helping others solve their problems. I mean, what do you think?
Absolutely. Almost, pulling from your story earlier, too, about when you were helping your coworker, I think that it's important that we have a vested interest in wanting to help people navigate their problems, right? Because, if we all work a little bit better together, it sounds kumbaya and what have you, but truthfully, why wouldn't you want to help problem solve? Because in turn, that helps you navigate your own life a little bit better too. And maybe there's that whole self-serving issue of it also makes you feel good, right? It makes you feel better to know that you have made someone else address something of difficulty in their life. So, having an authentic, vested interest in truly understanding what someone is coming to you with, is hugely important. And you should be asking those questions to, to show that you have an authentic and vested interest. And if you don't, then don't bother, right? Because there's enough fake nonsense in this world, right? I would hope that if somebody is coming to you, with an issue, or that you would already have an authentic desire to help people work through things. Because if you don't, just walk away.
No, and I will fully admit, as people know, I am very introverted, and part of my reaction when someone brings me a problem, I know no one wants to hear it framed in this way, but part of it is a fight or flight response. Like, I realize that someone is coming to me for an ear, maybe for a solution. I don't know. And that's the trouble. I don't want to do the wrong thing. So the way of the introvert is simply to take the easy path. And for a lot of us, that's let me give the best answer that I know to give, which, though nobly intentioned, is not always the right answer. And
right.
And what you just, the point that you just made is so salient. I want to just replay that whole answer, as that is such a good point. Sometimes it is important to ask those questions. And I think a term that I haven't used in a very long time, but I'm very curious to hear your take on this. But I think that in asking questions of another when they open up to you is validation. In other words, when you're showing an interest in their issue, you're validating their perspective instead of just shutting them down. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I have a tendency to and some people who have been, in years of therapy might come down on me for saying this, but I tend to think of my own problems in a light of they're not that bad, right? When looking at other issues going on in the world, right? So whatever's getting me down really isn't that big in the grand scheme of things. Some people might view that as an avoidance tactic. I don't know. But I think that may be an issue with working through my own things. But when I listen to other people, there are times where I might think to myself, why is this such a big deal? Right? But I think it's very important to remember that, again, and it might sound super easy, but it's what's a big deal to me, or what's not a big deal to me could be very easily a big deal to someone else. And that could be the straw that breaks the camel's back, right? Because we don't know what that smaller issue is building on top of. And so that's something to keep in mind too, because you don't know what's led up to the issue that they're coming to you with. So just taking a step back and being aware of your own biases and, recognizing that the way that you work through your own problems is not going to be the same way that somebody else needs to work through theirs.
And I think there's two very important points to make there. One is an aphorism that I'm sure a lot of people have probably heard and maybe even used, and that is, you never know what battle someone may be fighting that you don't see. So be nice. I mean, it sounds obvious, but...
Yes.
And the other is someone who comes to you with a problem that you may see as having an obvious solution, they may not be equipped to confront. I mean, when I first started running, let's just say I suffered all the symptoms of leg day with none of the experience to counteract those symptoms. So I was screaming, ... for help, mostly just screaming in agony, but I was screaming for help. And, I got some good tips on how to recover from leg day. I can't tell you how many times I saw that Sean Bean meme of one does not simply walk after leg day. But
Right.
they were right. But, the point is, it may have seemed to someone like you that has, probably prolific experience with leg day. You may have known the best recovery tactics, and you may have the same loathing for lactic acid as I do, but for me, it's a first time experience. So, I don't know. So there's a joke in there somewhere about going on. There's a joke in there somewhere about going on an acid trip, but I will abstain this one time.
Dang, you had it.
I had it, and then I lost it. Nah, and that's we're framing it in the context of leg day, and that's one of those things that if you know, but that's something that we all run into at some point or other. We all run into that situation that we don't necessarily know how to approach and overcome, but that to someone else, hey, been there, done that, got the t-shirt. Here's what you do. And I think here's another one of those things I'm very eager to hear your take on, but like we've been saying, when someone comes to you, the worst thing that you can do is trivialize their experience or lack of same. If they don't got it, they don't got it. And if you've got it, I think the best thing to do is give them benefit of your experience. I mean, Jill, take it away. What do you think?
Yeah. I think you also have to be careful of, what do they say? You don't ever want to, oh, I've been there. Here's my story. Right. We don't want to lead with that by any means. It's important to, hear people out for their own experience. And then maybe pull lessons from your own experience and use that in your response. Because I do think it's very easy to go, oh, well, that happened to me too. Here's what my story is, right? And that sort of veers away from what the purpose of that whole conversation is. But definitely glean the lessons out from your experience and offer that as a response, for sure. That's what I have been working on myself.
And I think that's another one of those points that everybody kind of thinks about back here, but that nobody really wants to admit. And that is problem solving in every context is a skill. And it is something that some people can say what you just said, which is, I recognize that it's a growth area and I want to do better. And I've seen it with my own eyes. Some people will say, well, I'm not so good at giving advice, go see someone else. And it's like, you never know what experience and expertise you're depriving the other person of, because they may need exactly what you have. I mean, yeah, there are some things that you're not going to go to, like, you wouldn't come to me for hair care advice, because, I mean, yeah, well, I'll just leave that one there. But, if I were looking for hair care advice, Jill, I would certainly ask you, because your hair looks a lot better than mine. You have a lot more of it, too. There's a reason I don't have very much of it. I like that it styles itself in the morning.
I hope it's around. Yeah, I think it's an important thing to continually work on and check in with yourself, because, I had an experience with a girlfriend that I went to go visit last summer, and she had a breakdown about a breakup, and oddly enough, I was being a completely awful friend, and I was being selfish because I had flown down there and expected to have a fun weekend, and that's it. It kind of took a different turn. And my response to her in her state of crisis, because I employed the previous things that I have denounced, which is to say, get over it. It's not that big of a deal. You have all these extra things going for you. Move on. Which wasn't helpful. That's not what she needed. And she was forthright enough to come to me and tell me that, and like point blank say, where's my friend? Where's the person that listens to me? I mean, and I came to you looking for an ear and somebody that I could count on, and I shut her down. And that's another thing that really like struck me. And since then I've been very, very adamant about practicing better listening skills, becoming a better friend, employing tactics that, where I am, I'm listening for content. I'm not listening to just simply reply. You want to be a valuable source of comfort for somebody, and just be a valuable person for other people in their life, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you phrased it that way. I actually wrote something down while you were talking on my notepad of forgetfulness. You can't read it because of the light, but remind people of the positive. And it sounds like that's just from my experience with you, at least. It seems like that's something that you have mastered over the years, and that's an amazing skill. And speaking just for myself, I appreciate that that's something that you bring to the table, because that's not always an easy skill to have.
It's not. It isn't. And I know that we're kind of bombarded by, kind of those things on social media where it's like, oh, your gratitude journal and what have you and all that, and it sounds cliche, but it's, it is a good practice, right? I don't have a journal. I don't write my things, my gratitude journal in the morning, but I do, there are days where things happen and you go, okay, wait, I'm going to step back. What are the positive things that are going on? What can I focus on? Even if it's just something super small, right? Because that's huge. Because again, what's your small positive can actually be huge for somebody else, right? So it's, you can focus on that, and that can really help to change your mindset and switch your focus. But, again, it takes practice, and it's not to trivialize anyone that's, that isn't there yet, right? But it just hopefully offering just some tactics to employ.
The perspective shift, I think, is something else that is a good skill to master. It's the difference between going to Food Lion and seeing that they're out of your favorite blend of coffee and saying, well, rats, I guess I'm not going to drink coffee today, and saying, but you know what? This Food Lion carries like 11 million other blends of coffee. I started to say brands and blends, and they just kind of ran together. So
yeah. I was with you. I got it.
So if they carry all these other kinds of coffee, then maybe I can try one of them and I'll find something that I like better. I have to follow that by saying that there is no better blend of coffee than Dunkin' Donuts Dunkin' Dark, but, that's just me.
Okay.
Contrary to what a certain other coffee manufacturer would have you believe, the best part of waking up is not their product in your cup.
It's the Double D's dark roast. Is that what you said?
That's what I drink.
That's
what I drink, at least.
You like? Okay. All right.
Dunkin' Donuts Dunkin' Dark.
I'll give it a whirl.
Let me know what you think.
Dunkin's Dark.
Let me know what you think.
Okay. And I mean, they sell it in the packages, right? So I can just buy it and use it at home.
They've even got them in. They even
done.
I think some places carry the Keurig mix too.
Ooh.
Yeah. And for anyone out there who's wondering, no, Dunkin' Donuts is not sponsoring this episode, although they really should, don't you think?
It might not hurt to reach out to them, Brandon.
What is it we said earlier? Do or do not, there is no try.
Yeah.
Well, we are almost out of time, but Jill, I feel like we've only just scratched the surface. So, what would you want to say to people out there that are watching? If you could give one piece of advice, if you had one most frequently asked question or something that you see most often that you would want to comment on, what would it be?
I would say take a step back and breathe before you respond. We are so wrapped up in the pressure to immediately respond and get out there. We have a knee-jerk reaction. I think there is a huge value in taking a breath, listening, and then responding. And sometimes you don't always need to respond in the manner that you think. So continually check in with yourself and ask if that's a truly appropriate way to respond.
You're right. Self-awareness is where all of this starts, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. What else? Anything else?
Yeah, and at the risk of simplifying things, I think just be a little bit kinder to one another, right?
I'm smiling because I referenced some of the friends of the channel earlier. Anyone who subscribes to Keeping It Criminal will know that he signs off every stream with "be good" and "be good to each other," and I think it's a great benediction for any interaction. And you said it perfectly.
Yeah, it's, you know, I try, and everywhere I go in my day, I try to make my interactions a positive one, whether it's at the grocery store or the post office, especially the post office, because that one, usually everyone's pretty irritated. But, you know, recognizing that everyone's going through a lot of stuff right now. There's some heavy stuff going on in the world. So anytime that you can make an effort to, you know, again, without sounding cliche, but to brighten someone's day, or just offer an ear, that goes a long way.
You are exactly right. Those are some wise words. Those are some very wise words.
Kumbaya, y'all. I don't know.
Kumbaya, y'all. That is right. Now, those are some awesome words and some wise words, and I know you're sick of hearing it, but I'm very grateful to you for joining us to offer them today. So thank you very much for being here.
No, thank you, Brandon. That was so fun. I enjoyed talking with you, and I thoroughly appreciate our discourse online, and I look forward to many more chats with you.
Yeah, absolutely. We have got to have you back. We have absolutely got to have you back.
I'd love to. I'd love it. This is great. You know, and hopefully I'll get my internet set up a little bit stronger.
Yeah. And so...
unlikely given my technology skills, or lack thereof.
You can take it from one who is surrounded by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 computers, 7 if you count my cell phone. You can be the most proficient technologist and still have problems. There's a reason why I have that gigantic bottle of Excedrin over there. So...
I feel like I need the Excedrin just listening to this story about 7 screens in front of me.
Oh, just wait.
I need to go outside and stare at my trees.
Oh, just wait. We're going to cut to a wide shot here in a minute that shows the immediate area, but in a previous episode, the episode with Jeff Kalan, I gave a description of some of my surroundings, and that's a good episode to watch too. That's the same one where we talked about just how many boxes of pasta are in my kitchen. So, yeah, that's a good episode too.
Send me a picture of that, please. I need to see this.
Count on it. So, and to explain, so you folks at home saw a polished, clean-looking, professionally edited episode for this installment of B Squared. Not so when we were making it. So this is the power of positive editing. So we experienced our own flavor of technical difficulties earlier. We had some connection issues, and you know, things happen when you're using technology. That's all I can say. But I would love to say that I could give you some outtakes like you might see on Artie's Corporate Fiction when he runs into technical difficulties. I haven't had enough caffeine or sugar for that, but you know, maybe next time. But yeah, the power of positive editing compels you. Isn't that the movie quote?
I will stand by that.
And Jill was a trooper. She was very patient through it all, and you know, you would never guess that we'd had those kinds of problems. But you know, Jill was a trooper, and I cannot thank you enough for just being patient and working through it with us. So, Yeah.
Hey, you know what? This has been so much fun. I mean, why would you get irritated, right?
Exactly.
It's a blast. It's a blast talking with you, and thank you.
And let me just say on air, Jill, I am grateful to call you friend. So thank you very much for being there when I need you.
Likewise, 100%.
Awesome.
Send me your stats this week. I want to see an improvement.
I will. The gym equipment is getting replaced, I think, in about 3 more weeks. So I'm just hanging on till then. But this seems to be one of the better weeks. So count on a new Excel spreadsheet sometime Friday. I think, considering that yesterday I went up by another level, I think you'll be proud of me.
Awesome. All right. I look forward to the little ping on my phone.
Yes, ma'am.
Makes me happy.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
All right. Well, for now, that's all we've got for you. But as always, thanks to one and all for tuning in. Until next time, this is Brandon Bridges reminding you the best way to be is B squared. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.
TNPIR 4002 says screw Flanders.